Record. Boom. All right, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's up, guys? Daryl from Smart Shooters, and today I got my colleague, my friend, one of my favorite instructors in the world. You can find her on Instagram at Low Key Defense, but I got Dr. Casi in the house. So, what's up, guys?
What's up? What's up? Thank you for welcoming me.
Yeah. So, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Always nervous doing these type of things, but I'm good.
You ain't got to be nervous. You ain't got to be nervous. We just kicking it, being cool. How we be cool?
Yep.
So for those people who don't know, who is Low Key Defense?
Okay, so low key defense is somebody who's chill, a new instructor, of course, but getting some great experience. Somebody that's chill, pretty much low key, but when you get to know me, I'm not that low key, but when it's in like public spaces, low key, I really love what I do, this work and what I do in my full-time job. And so I think which is I'm a psychologist. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm a licensed psychologist. So that's where Dr. Casi comes from. And I always like to mention I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. I don't get food. I love Chicago. That's why I bought the sweatshirt when I was there. But I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, hands down, Ravens Nation. So that's where Low Key Defense is from.
Lets us know.
So and so as a psychologist, getting into this field, doing my thing, and just wanting to kind of, I guess because I'm low key, because I'm pretty private, that's where Low Key Defense came from. So that's about as much as I got right now.
Okay, that worked, because that's my next question, which is, how did you get that name?
Well, with the help of my great colleague and trainer and friend, Daryl, as we sat and thought about several names, we thought about just how chill I am and how I didn't want to be too out there. I was really nervous about creating a Instagram page. So I was really nervous about that. And I didn't know if honestly, how people will respond in the field of psychology too, right? Like, how are you a firearm instructor and a psychologist? And so I was just kind of like, well, maybe I should be a little low key about this. I'm kind of horrible at marketing myself right now, and I'm actually getting better. Let me not say that. I'm getting better because guess what? I'm doing this video.
Yeah.
But it kind of started out with just, looking at how I want to approach this field and how I kind of live my life, very private, very chill, and low key. So yeah, Low Key Defense. That's how we came up with it. And everybody loved it because not only was I texting you, I was texting some friends and they was like, that's great, even though they weren't that great a supporter of me being a firearm instructor. But they support me now and they follow me.
Interesting that you say that. So my question to you was gonna be, how has being a firearms instructor affected either your personal life or even your professional life as a psychologist? Like, what role does you being an instructor play in that? Has it affected you negatively?
Actually not. I was actually surprised at how many people were like, yes, friends, sorority sisters, just even some of my colleagues. I've actually taken a colleague to a shooting range, and I was just like, hey, anybody want to go to the shooting range? And they were just like, yeah, I've always wanted to learn how to shoot a gun. So when they got there, they was like, wow, you're well equipped. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'm a firearm instructor. And they was like, oh my God. So it was actually kind of a little relief to see that. And so Yeah, it hasn't really negatively impacted me. Some people have said some things that you'll hear like, oh, you ready to kill somebody? And, I kind of go through that, have that conversation with them. I'm usually not offended when that question actually happens. And kind of where I grew up, I grew up in Baltimore City. The
Yeah.
Wire is a good representative of like, I didn't grow up specifically in those areas and my life was not the Wire, but that's real. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's been a positive response since then,
Okay.
surprisingly.
All right, hold on 1 second. Let me make sure that this not trying to do. All right, there we go. All right. So what made you get into firearms? Like, how did your firearms journey start?
Well, that's a good question because I think a lot of people was surprised when they found out I was a firearm instructor or when I just got my CPL, right? Because those were there was a short distance in between. But my introduction to firearms was actually when I was like 8, living in Baltimore City and having older male sibling and just family members and just exposure to them. So, first time I shot a firearm, I was in the alley shooting a BB gun, and my brother's teaching me how to shoot a BB gun. It's probably gonna get my brother in trouble now, but because my mom didn't know that. But I was young, and that's when I was exposed to them, and I always laugh about kind of that experience. Although I was actually pretty good though, because we were shooting. Remember the Pepsi bottles? They were
Mhm.
glass. We were shooting
Yep.
at those, right? So I was I was actually pretty good, and so that was my first exposure. And then around like middle school, 8th grade or so, more exposure, and I remember saying, when I get older, I'm going to have like this silver pistol with like a blue handle and everything. And so I was young, but it was just like, I'm going to have a collection. I've always said I was going to have a collection. And so, but getting into the field, being a
Yeah.
psychologist and all, and it was just like, no, I don't talk about that much, but I've always been intrigued with firearms. And so I would go to the shooting range, go to a ladies' day on Mondays where it's free and all that. And so I would go with just some individuals who may have mentioned it here and there, but and in Maryland, it's a lot more difficult to get a CPL than it is
Yeah.
in Michigan.
Yeah.
And
Whole lot harder.
yeah, right. So you don't hear a lot about African Americans, especially getting a CPL and owning firearms and having a collection. It's like a taboo to even have that conversation. And so it wasn't until I got here and noticing like how many people were talking about firearms. And I was like, man, I think this would be an opportunity. Just crazy busy and getting my license and everything. But finally, it was just like, hey, I'm going to do it. And of course, it was 2020, but I was already saving up money for it. So in 2019, when I finally got my license, got that nice raise bump, from being a master's level to a PhD license. And so I was saving up money to get one. And in 2020, I was just like, let me go ahead and do it. And still not realizing that I was part of that uptake in sales for African
Yeah.
Americans until I got my CPL, because I bought my firearm before I got my CPL for home defense. It was crazy. So yeah. So that's
That's
how I got
dope.
into firearms.
That's dope. So what made you want to become an instructor?
So it wasn't until I went to the CPL class and having a conversation with you actually about like, wow, all this stuff, all this information. And it was literally the legal part of the
Mm-hmm.
CPL class that was like, oh my goodness, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of teaching people this. And initially I was like, man, I need to get better with my firearm, becoming familiar with my firearm and being willing to carry. And I was watching like a whole bunch of YouTube videos and getting prepared to go to the shooting range a lot more and all that, and just kind of really learning about this community, if anything. And it wasn't, and so when I did the CPL class and I was like, why don't we know these laws?
Right.
And I thought about so many news stories or so many people that got arrested for having possession of a firearm, and how like, or it could have been a defensive shooting. And it was just like all this stuff was just flooding through my head. And I said, if our people knew their legal rights with firearms,
Mm-hmm.
we would probably have less individuals in jail, less individuals trying to obtain a firearm illegally because they feel like they have to, right? Because they don't know their
Yep.
laws. They don't know what
Right.
they're what they are privy to, if anything, right? So the legal section. And then not just that, those who do own firearms, and just the responsibility. Because you can buy a firearm, but you are held the minute you get that firearm, you are legally responsible for all the ammunition that comes out that barrel, right? Let's just say
Right.
that. But wherever it goes, you are responsible for it. And
Right.
so I felt like I wanted to be part of that community, and part of the group that actually teaches individuals about this. And so, and then I was like, Black women. So that was the
Yeah.
other thing, like women in self-defense. And because the amount of like statements that's made, and how they even had women pictures in the curriculum. And I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh my goodness, Black women need to know this too. So I just kind of had all these ideas. And so when we had a conversation and you encouraged me to do it, I was like, not sure. And he was like, no, you can do it. You can do it. You can continue to train at the same time. And then you can help people as you train. And I'm like, bet, let's do this. And then when you told me how much it was, I was like, I got this in the bank. Let's make this happen. Like, and I can make this back. Oh yeah, let's do
Yeah.
this, right? Just by assisting and helping out and being part. And it was just so inspiring. So it's just kind of like, I guess it was like a 2-week turnaround that I was able to make that decision. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's dope. I'm definitely proud watching the growth, watching you do your thing. Like crazy from the first time you came and took class to now
Yeah.
how much you've grown. Which leads me to my next question of why did you choose Smart Shooters? Like, cause you could have went out right and just been low-key defense all by yourself. Could have just what was it about what we had going as Smart Shooters that made you want to be part of the team? And like, I don't have employees, like we're teammates. Like that's how we always ride. So what made you want to join the team?
I think it was more so because you felt like you were part of the family in the CPL class. It was like you took CPL class, you were drafted into the Smart Shooters family, right? So you felt a part from the beginning. And I think it was also the way in which you approach your teaching style. So it's very like welcoming, coming into the room, coming into the class when you're being taught. It wasn't a harsh atmosphere. And although it was safe, because I didn't feel like at any point that I wasn't like, oh, these people they're not messing with the gun, they're not
Yep.
watching how the students are taking care of their firearms and stuff like that. Like I was paying attention to how mindful and how everything flowed. And so it was just like, this is an established organization and Black owned. Come on now, Black owned. I'm all about Black owned, like for real. So, and the crazy thing about that was I didn't know of any other Black owned. And last year, yeah, it was 2020 when I heard about you. I had already heard about Smart Shooters by like, I'll just say individuals I have encountered.
Got you.
By so many different individuals I encountered. And it was just like, oh yeah, go to Smart Shooters. And I kept trying to look for you, but I was typing in the website wrong. And so I finally had one individual who was just like, oh no, I just got mine from here. And I'm like, oh, I heard about them. And they like, we did it wrong because I was seeing all clients online. So why did I choose Smart Shooters? I heard about you had a reputation before I came and before I even looked you up and registered for the class. And then when I got there, it was safe. It was welcoming. You felt already part of the family. And I like your approach to how you teach, right? Like you can laugh and
Yeah,
joke and also still kind of get the seriousness of owning the firearm and how you need to walk around and the responsibility. And so, yeah, I think that was the big piece. And so when I took the training course with you, and the question was, oh, you can go on your own, or you, and I was just like, why is that even a question? Like, like as long as I'm here, this is where I'm going to be, right? Like I would love to help build this too, and
yeah,
expand it, and so yeah, that's why I chose
that's
functional.
love. Well, I appreciate that feedback. When the viewers watch this, just so y'all know, Cassie has never told me nothing she just said before, so I feel super special. Feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, but nah, that's dope, and it's been a pleasure, like having you, like building this with you, has been great. So now switching it up just a little bit, because people are gonna ask. Because you are a woman instructor and you are a woman to a advocate and you are a Black woman, believe it or not, the question isn't deep. What do you carry every day?
Ah, I carry a Glock 43, 43X,
Yeah.
and I actually love it. My first firearm was a Ruger Security 9, and I like that one too. He has a name. All my firearms, just like my cars, have names. So but when the minute I put the Glock 43X in my hand, and I didn't even know about it. I just happened to be watching a YouTube video, and it was
Mhm.
like best EDCs to carry, and that's affordable. And I didn't even know. And I had watched so many other um, YouTube videos about like EDCs. Well, I didn't watch EDCs. I just watched like firearms, great firearms, so affordable firearms, blah, 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 right? And so when I saw that video that just happened to be a suggestion, I was like, oh, Glock falls into this category. Let me go check it out. And when I was at the store, I put it in my hand and I was like, oh, bet. I'm getting this. And it was my birthday too.
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh, happy birthday to me. I'm getting this right now. And so I love how like it conceals, it's
Mm.
not heavy. I call it sexy, sophisticated. So it's just, and it just fits well in my hand. Like I feel like I have a better grip with that firearm. So yeah.
Dope. That's all great answers. To me, I carry the 48, which is the 43's big brother,
Mhm.
with a longer slide. So I like that. Now, budget not an issue, right? Like let's just say you got whatever amount of money you need and you get to go to the gun store and buy your dream gun. What are you getting?
Right now, it is the SIG 365 with optics. I know. It is because when the first time I saw it, I was actually intrigued with SIG when they had, and I can't remember what model it is, but they can switch out the barrel, and you
Yeah,
can like,
that is the P320.
yes, the P320. So I was looking at that one. And so of course, the other thing I did was when I went to the shooting range after buying my Security 9, I would go and still rent an additional firearm
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of like get a feel for different firearms. And somebody was like, hey, you might like the 365. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And then I held it and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I shot it and I was like, oh, I love how I shoot this gun. This is great. It's great. And then when you had yours at the range, and I was like, oh, let me try it, let me shoot it. And you had the Romeo sight. I was like, oh, wait a minute, let me. And then I just fell in love with it. So I was just like, that's going to be the first gun I have. What sights, red dots? I was like, that's what I'm going to do. So right now, that is like my love. I do want an AR-15, but I still need to research them.
Yeah,
An instructor should always have AR-15, right? Like,
you
I
should
mean,
because you
yeah,
can.
yeah, right. So, but I'm a person who like, let me do my research first. So just to figure out what I want, if I want to build or purchase or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. So I'm gonna go off script because you kind of just made me think of something. Um, I know I do that. I know, my bad.
That's
Uh,
cool.
but- so the question was about how are you so confident as a new firearms instructor? Because believe it or not, there's a lot of instructor shaming going on right now. Like,
Mhm.
I see it on IG every day, and it's terrible. Like, people are like, "Oh, just because you're USCCA certified doesn't mean you know shit." Blah blah blah, and it's like, bro, like, why though?
Yeah,
Like,
it's not necessary.
yeah, how do you keep your confidence in the era of, oh, you're not qualified until you've been doing it for 30 years?
Okay, so like I said, I think one, I'm okay with saying I don't know something, right? So, and I know like the minute you step on the range or you step in the classroom, people like you're the expert. You need to show me da 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 da. I mean, if you don't know the answer, then why should I listen to you? I mean, I get that and I understand, but that's why I'm also okay with acknowledging that I'm new.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not gonna have all the answers. I'm still reviewing slides when I gotta teach, right?
Yeah,
Because this is not something I do all day. Like I see clients all day. So that's one thing I'm okay with, like acknowledging where I had areas of growth. The other part of that is I know I'm confident and I'm good at teaching. I'm good at like
yeah,
presenting. Um, so I'm confident in that. And when I'm teaching the material, I'm confident that I've at least reviewed this material or I'm teaching you what I already know. So that's that. And then the other thing is I'm good at reading people. So people is when I'm in the classroom and I'm looking at people in the classroom, I can pretty much understand that, like, okay, this is going to be interesting, or I can get a sense of how people might feel when they get down to the range. And when I'm walking around on the range, I try to be in tune with people's nervous energy, anxieties, fears. I try to be in tune with that because one, I don't want you to be so nervous that you slip up and do something and hurt someone. So I do need to be very attentive to that. But I'm also confident that what I do know, I can teach.
yeah.
What I don't know, I can say, hey, I'm not the one. Let's hold up. And I'm going, Nick, Daryl, like I've gone as far as I can. Not saying
Right.
this person is not teachable, but I've gone as far as I can. And so I'm okay with saying that. And if somebody's going to train me and they look at me and be like, was that good? I'm not going to be like, yeah, that was good. And I'm not shooting good or I'm not paying attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, or if I just gave you a stupid answer, right? I can say stupid answer for myself, but I wouldn't say a student gave a stupid answer. But for me, it's just like, yeah, I got some work to do. Like I went to a training in Texas. And so she was like, all right, do this and this and that. And I came to her and I was like, hey, I got to work on, this is my specific training goal for this individual session. And so when she told me to shoot the first time, and I had just now started practicing with my EDC because I just got it for my birthday and everything. So it's just like still getting used to that firearm, and that has more recoil than the Ruger, right? So I'm like trying to get used to that. And so when she looked at it, she was like, "So was that good?" I was like, "No, it wasn't good." Like I had no problem saying that, and she was like, Okay, just wanted to make sure. And she's trying to see where I'm at, right? No. So that allows me to be confident. And there were times like just going throughout college and school where I felt like I had to have the right answer if they asked me something. And if I didn't know, professors not always expecting you to have the right answer. They want to know if you know what you don't know, what you're talking about, right? And are you teachable? So that's where I'm at. That's how I feel confident when I'm in the classroom.
Okay. So what advice would you give to another woman who wants to get into firearms, and even a step further says, hey, I think that I could be an instructor. Like, I would like to do that. What advice would you give to them starting out, especially if they're not a gun person, right? Like, because me and you, we're not Nick, right? Nick is eat, sleep, breathe guns, like, right. And neither, like, we're not there, but we both can bring our backgrounds into where we are, and it's relatable to people. Like, so what advice would you give somebody who says they all they have is their background, which isn't guns, but they want to do this? Like, what would you tell them?
I mean, first and foremost, research. There's so much information out there. I did not know how much information there was out there. How many YouTube channels, how many like Instagram feeds, and just like that amount of information. And until you just tap into it, that's all you have to do is tap into it. I did a lot of research on like firearms. I would go to like stores, websites, and see what firearms were available. And I would look at the prices, and I'm like curious to why things cost, certain things. So then I would just put the name of the firearm in the research, and in the search and Google. And I would just like, people have like videos on stuff and like feedback, experiences, unboxing, just reviews. And so that was my introduction to like, oh, that is a horrible gun, right? Like, I am not buying that pink gun. Not at all. First of all, not a big fan of pink. But even don't wear pink, not a big fan of pink. But, and it was just kind of like, it really was just kind of looking into that. And then once I started to get to know people that had firearms, because the minute you actually mention firearms, you don't know how many people carrying firearms till you say something.
Right.
And which is actually good, because that's how it's supposed to be. It's actually good, right? So so once I started, and of course I went to my dad, he was in the military. And so I started asking him questions. And so he gave me some tips. And then I started to talk to him what I found. And he's like, what, wait? So like I'm educating him on just like new information and everything. So just having like consistent conversation, connecting with firearm instructors on the internet, because when I did get low-key defense and people started following me and I started following others, or when I go to the shooting range, I chop it up. I might be the only Black person in that shooting range, but guess what? I'm gonna start chopping it up. I'm gonna start asking you questions. I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, and I'm make you feel real good that you educated me, and truly you are. And at the same time, I might already know something, but I'm gonna see what other people say about stuff. So go to a range and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Try guns out. Try them out. That's what I did. I had already purchased one, but before I purchased that one, I tried out at least 5 different firearms. And of course, everybody gives you, try Glock, right? So everybody gives you that. But then everybody wants to start you out with a 22 if you're a woman and you've never shot a firearm before. And so I'm like shooting 22s, and I'm just like, I don't know, why does this feel different than what I used to shoot when I went, and it was just like, no, because, other than a BB gun, my next exposure was a 9mm. And then I shot a 45 when I was dating somebody, and we were, and so it's just like, why does this feel so light? Well, because every time I go to the shooting range, I was just asking for a firearm, right? Because, I just want a firearm, do some targets, and because I'm uneducated about it. So the minute I start asking more questions, people get excited. Those who are working at the firearm stores and those who are working at the ranges, they are actually excited when you talk to them. So ask them questions. What's popular? What's commonly rented? What is not rented? Why do people not rent this firearm, right? So ask those questions. Watch reviews. I mean, you can have, what I loved about watching the reviews of firearms, because you can literally have people say, this gun works well for me. And you can have 5 other videos say, this is crap. Let me show you why it's crap. The reviews that I can't remember the channel, but they would take specific people would suggest firearms and they would take them through the ringer, put them in water, shoot about 100 rounds through them, put them in sand, shoot about 100 rounds through them, see if it malfunctions. And they would take it all the way through like mud, just mud and sand, and see when will it malfunction, right? And I'm like, listen, I don't think I'm going to go through all those elements that quick in a day or in a situation. But if this firearm can make it this far, and then that's a good firearm, right? And not malfunction. I'm like, that's a good firearm. And so I think that's when I started really kind of getting into it and figuring things out, asking questions, and then yes, taking classes, nice. Doing private lessons, especially if you don't feel comfortable taking like after the CPL, or if you're not even ready you don't feel like you're ready to do a CPL, then take some private lessons first so you can feel comfortable with it, because there are some places that will let you go all the way through that class, not even tell you if you fail, take your money and you go. Right. Heard about it. I haven't experienced that, but I've heard about places like that. And then I've heard about places that will work with you. And then some places, they'll just pass you and really not pay attention. And so that's a problem too, right? So like, do your research, talk to people, follow people, send people messages. Don't become stalkerish, but strike casual conversation. So yeah, that's what I would encourage. And then when it comes to firearm instructions, watch other firearm instructors. I'm a big advocate on learning by watching, learning by observing. And so I have learned what to do and what not to do by watching people. So do that. And then talk to other firearm instructors, like let them know who you are, what you're doing, what your ideas are. And if they've been in the game for a while, they can be like, oh, you want to follow this person. Oh, you want to do this. Oh, you want to do this. Take notes and then do it. Follow through with it.
Dope. So who are some people that you follow that you look up to, or maybe that you follow that other people should follow?
I'm going to open this up because I don't want to get anybody's name wrong.
No, that's fair.
So I know one of the first people I started following because before I came back to Michigan, I was in North Carolina and there was another African-American male. This is before I met you. I was at a shooting range and just kind of practicing and, with my own firearm, becoming comfortable with it. And he told me about my keeper's defense. My sister, see, I messed up already. My sister's keeper. I had like three different tags. And I'm like, I love Tig. I love Tig. Tig, don't get mad at me. My sister's keeper's defense. Yes. So she was the first person I followed ever. And then from there was Nina.
Yeah, Nina.
Yeah, De La Flores. So I follow her.
Yeah, she's
tactical. She dope too. Tactical Tangerine Defense. Love her. I follow you, Smart Shooters LLC, and Daryl Rustic.
Wait, say my last name again so I can hear that more accent.
And then Tactical Social Worker. So I think she also changed her name to Not Your Average Social Worker. # Not Your Average Social Worker. So, and then Arm Atlas. So Arm Atlas, he does,
Yeah. Shout
yeah,
out on Atlas.
yes. So,
Homie.
oh, and body by O 318. So O. So
Mhm.
these are individuals that are like consistently in my time feed. Um, yeah. And so, and when I started following her, I was just like, tactical social worker. I was just like blown away that another, mental health clinician was like in the field. So I just started like shooting her all these messages. I was probably a little weird, kind of fan crazy when I first started talking to her, but she responded, and ever
Yeah.
since then we just been communicating. So I love it. It's great,
So
and that's how you do it. So
you're right. That's how you do it. To anybody who watches this, reach out to people. Just shoot messages. Believe it or not, the gun snob thing is some people like that, but most of us, especially Black instructors, we all cool. Like we all understand what it's like to reach out to somebody cold. Like it's people who still text me gun range pictures, but they live like down south, and I'm way up in Michigan, and it's cool. So reach out to people. Like reach out to Low Key Defense because she dope too. She gonna take care of y'all. Um, Cass, give us a story. Tell us what your best experience so far has been instructing. Was it teaching a class? Was it getting a difficult person to pass the shooting qualification? Like, what's the story of like your best memory so far as an instructor?
it still goes back to the first time I was range safety officer. And we had that young lady who experienced significant trauma with firearms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason why it's my best story, and I have this actually on my feed, like my posts in IG.
Okay.
It was because it was like seeing the whole reason of why I decided to do this, to be a firearm instructor, right? It was
Yeah.
seeing all that to come together, my psychology experience and everything, seeing all that come together in one. And then also seeing that like within that time that we were at the range, she was able to pass, and she she had a whole meltdown, right? In the very beginning. You came, assisted me with it. And it was just kind of like being able to see her from afar and know that like, okay, there was some, I could see the trauma like in her body. And then going to speak with her, standing right next to her, helping her fire the first time, even though it was still kind of traumatic for her.
Yeah.
She was able to overcome and pass the class and actually shoot fairly well, right? After working with her and then also communicating with her at the end. And she passed before other people did, right? I remember that. I remember she had passed before some other people did because I was still working with another person at the very end, right? And so it was just kind of seeing that like it was of course sad and frustrating to know her story, right? And what her experience was.
Right.
And then for her to have that experience on the range. And I know she was embarrassed, right? And it was just like, but she didn't stop. It was like her taking that power back that was taken from her, right? And so that, and I'm me being a trauma psychologist, this is the work that I do. I love to see my clients take that power back and to see her do it all in one setting and on the range that in those 3 hours, right? It was just like, wow. And I mean, she hugged me, wasn't expecting that, and you know how I am. I feel about COVID on everybody. I don't care if you got it or not. I feel like COVID on everybody. But she hugged me and I was receptive of it because it was just like, you see the overcoming and now she's okay with handling the firearm. And then, one of the last things she said to me, because she went from like a 9mm to a 22. And she was like, I'm gonna get that 9mm though. Like, so she's inspired to keep going. you know, and to see her boyfriend there, like empowering her and being there with her too, was just like phenomenal. So I think that was by far, that's still kind of like the one thing I remember when I'm out on the range. It's just like, this is why I'm here, and this is why I want to do this, and why I still kind of have like classes that I want to develop. But of course, you know, it's been a little crazy. So, but I will get that class developed and we'll do it.
Yes, you will. Now, that's a dope memory. I remember that class like yesterday, and I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Like, that was a crazy experience. That also was the first time a student just hugged me like that on the range, and it was like, you know, normally I'd be like, don't touch me, bro. But in that moment, I was like, yo, this is like real. Like, we really doing the real work. Like, this is like, this is why we here.
And nobody got hurt. Like,
man, right. Nobody got hurt. Because bro, I was scared for a minute. I can't lie to you.
That's trauma. Like, right.
That was deep. But to watch how you were able to coach her, it was dope, because it also was a moment for me to be like, this is why I brought Cassie to the team. Like, because these are moments where, I could have been in that space. Like, you know, I mean, I live hood life. I've been on both sides of a firearm incident. Like, so, but to have a licensed psychologist on my team who understands the trauma, like, that she's going through, and how to talk her through it, and understood that we were there to certify people for a CPL. So you didn't turn it into a 4-hour therapy session either.
No, like, right,
it was like, yo, we got to get past this, because otherwise you pay this man your money for no reason. No, that was dope. That was one of those days where I was like, this is why I brought Cass to the team. Like, that's what we need.
Yeah.
So what was your least favorable moment so far being an instructor? Do you have one?
Yes. Do you remember it? Like, and this is where I'm gonna be honest and kind of say this is a straight like F up for me, right? Like, and I still praise God that nobody's hurt, and still to this day I cringe about it. Like, it was the worst thing ever to me. But like, I'm working with one last person on the field, on the range, and we're like, these are her last rounds, right? I think she was on her last rounds, and you're over here. I know that you're over here talking to one person, and I hear Nick, but I didn't know he walked down range, right? Because I'm still like coaching her what she's going to do and all the things that we had talked about and everything. Yep. So he's behind me, and he's at the last target, right? The last board with the last target. And so like, I'm preparing her, we all set up. And by the time I'm like, okay, go. So she lets off one round, and it's like, by the time I realize out the corner of my eye, I see Nick downrange. I'm going to go stop her, but she lets off one round. And I'm like, oh, you know, we both see it right after she lets off one round. So we, both of us like, oh crap, you know, and she's like, oh crap. And Nick's like, what the? His face, like, he just went red and just kind of like, and then you're like, did that really just happen? And I'm just like, oh, that is the worst. And I'm sitting here thinking like, nobody's hurt, but I'm like, freaking idiot, like cussing myself out in my head. And at the same time, she's like apologizing, and I'm like telling her, this is not your fault. Like this, like, granted, yes, what's the 4 rules of firearm safety and all that stuff, right? But I'm also blocking her view because I'm standing like this, right? So we both don't see him until he's way down there and he's actually pulling the target down. So I'm shaking talking about this. Like, just, it's still like, I still cringe to this day, because I'm just like, if she was not a controlled shooter, he could have got shot, you know? And it was just like, Oh my goodness. And so to this day, I am very mindful. Even when I feel like I'm probably traumatized as I'm talking about this. Even when I'm at the indoor shooting range, I still have a tendency to look all the way down.
Yep.
Like look all the way down to make sure like nobody, you're at an indoor shooting range, right? Like you can't go beyond.
Right.
There's like barricades, you can't go beyond that. But it's still like, I have this tendency to look all the way across the range and wherever I'm standing to look all the way across the range before I actually pull the trigger. So like, and even now, like I'm a lot more on edge when I'm at the range in a sense of like, before I tell them to go ahead and fire, shoot ready. I'm like, I'm looking. So yeah, that was a little tough. And then we had a pep talk, you know.
Yeah, we did.
We had a pep talk, and I apologize. I don't know how many times. Even if we went out to eat afterwards, I still apologize.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that was a learning moment for all of us because like when it first happened, I went from like shock to just being like livid. Like I was just so mad. And I was like, but this has to be like a teachable moment. Like, and so one is dope that even as an instructor, you can admit that you made a mistake, right? Because having a shooter shoot with another instructor downrange, but it was also on Nick. Cause I was kind of mad with him too, because he should have notified us that he was going downrange. He simply could have just said downrange, we would have known. Then we like, okay, we gotta wait for Nick. Yeah, that whole day let me know as the lead instructor of the business, like I have to be like, I gotta really be honest about safety. Like it's really like, I mean, and again, it could have happened to anybody, and where y'all were at compared to where Nick was at, it would have been next to impossible for him to get hurt, but it was still possible.
Yeah.
And so it made me just reevaluate, like, okay, even as lead instructor, like, all right, am I really empowering you guys to be safe? What systems could we put in place? Like, and then one thing I never thought about was like, what do you do when there's a safety incident? Like, I mean, granted, it was a near miss. So like you said, we talked about it, whatever. But I was just like, even as like, okay, I own this company. What do I do when there's a safety incident? Because if Nick would have got hit, that would have been the end of Smart Shooters. Like, I'd have had.
I mean, yeah, right. Like, and that would and I probably would have carried that for the rest of my life. Like, I probably would have just been like, you know what, I'm gonna just let my license expire. We don't need to. We don't. I know. Nobody would know. Nobody would know.
Yeah,
If I was ever an instructor, low key defense would have been taken down. Just disappeared. You know. So.
But, I mean, one of the dope things about it was that you were such a new instructor at that time. Like, it was dope to see how you owned it in the moment. Like, I didn't have to even say anything before you was like, I know I messed up. Like, I shouldn't have did that. Like, it was really cool to see the way you just owned up to it and was like, yo, like, and I mean, like I said, we had several talks, we learned from it, but watching you in that moment, that's where I was like, okay, she's really ready to be like an instructor 100%, because the way you just owned it, like, oh my God, that was my mistake. Like, I shouldn't have did that. That was major. I thought that was real major. I was glad you didn't quit, because I for a second,
I would have, right? I was like, look, I'm gonna just hang up. And we laughing about it now, but that day I was like, dang on near tears. I actually did cry, because when we were driving back from the range to go get something to eat, like, I cried, and one of my friends happened to call me, and I was just like vented and went through, and I was just like, he got a good freaking shot, and da, 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 like just kind of like, you know. And so she said the same thing, like, okay, he didn't get shot. He was far away. And at the same time, this is a learning moment. You know how serious this is. So now you're going to take it much more serious. And I was just like, yeah, you're right about that. Like, you ain't got to worry about that no more. So, yeah. So
talk about that a little bit. Like, talk about what adjustments you made mentally to make sure that you don't have those near misses on the range.
I pay attention so much more where I stand, because the reason why I didn't see him is because how I was standing. And that was just like the whole thing. And so like when I'm assisting students now, I'm paying a lot of attention to how I'm standing, where I can see them, the other students next to me, and even just kind of making sure I'm very aware of even what's going on behind me too. So yeah. And even just like with my headset, I make sure I got batteries in it. So I'm not wearing the other headsets where I can't hear conversation. Right. And so just like who's near me and everything. So I think even just like equipment matters too.
It plays a big part.
Yeah, right. When you're just wearing earplugs and you're wearing those earmuffs that you can't hear what's going on and you can't hear who's communicating with you, you can't hear. And so your situational awareness decreases. Like, ugh. So like that's one thing. I also make note of all the people that's around me. So like the next time I'm RSO, I make note of who's standing where and who's on the line. So if I don't see them where they're usually standing, where are they? Right. So, and then it's like, oh, okay, they're loading back at the barrels. Great. And so just being mindful of where people are placed and if they are in where they're supposed to be. So I think that's definitely the things, especially with like being downrange and all that stuff. And I'm also very mindful, which I was actually very mindful of CPL, how people were holding their firearms when they're on the range and on the line. Mm-hmm. Because I remember, and also I'm kind of like that hall monitor when you're running instead of walking. Like I remember when I would be walking up and down before you and Nick is kind of giving instruction and I'm just kind of walking the line. I'm quick. Take your finger off trigger. You don't need it on there right now, right? Like, hey,
the number one rule violator.
Like I'm hey. So I'm also very mindful that how people are holding their firearms, because are they pointing towards themselves? Are they, you know what I'm saying? Are they doing stuff like even when they're like talking about how to correct something, like they'll have the firearm going this way. Oh, you want me to do that? And type of stuff. So it's just like,
right.
So I'm very mindful of the person, how they're holding their firearm next to me, and the person I'm helping. I'm paying attention to that and how that person's holding their firearm, and just kind of proximity of things. I don't know. I feel like I've become much more hyper vigilant on the gun range, and I think it's beneficial at the same time. You don't want to be too relaxed.
Yeah. So that is one thing that I tell myself every night before I teach classes. You can't, don't be comfortable. Like you cannot go on the gun range. My nerves is always I'm cool, but my nerves is always on edge because if I don't watch, that'll be the day. The day that I'm just like, oh, everything is good, is the day that something will happen. And I'm I can't even imagine, because it only takes one incident and you might as well start join a multi-level marketing scheme because firearm instructing is over.
Oh, and even nowadays those aren't even working. So
man, that's what I'm saying. If you mess up, then it's over.
Yeah.
So what is next for you? So you instructing now, you getting your feet wet, you teaching classes, but what's next for you? What should people expect? Anything exciting coming up?
What's next for me? I think this is actually the challenge. It's exciting and it's a challenge at the same time for me because I know that I'm called to travel for my business and what I do. And so I'm leaving Michigan. Doesn't mean I'm not going to come back. I do, I have people here that I love, and so I'll definitely come and visit and come back. But I actually, in my travels, I actually want to connect with like other firearm instructors, especially those that I follow. I would love to shadow with them. I would love to put something on with them, like not your average social worker. Like she and I are already talking about like being able to do some stuff together because she is doing some things of like things I had ideas for. She already has a 2-day course, right? Where she's doing boundaries? Oh God, my memory has been jacked
Butchering
up.
the whole course up, messing
Right.
it up.
I know, right? But go to her website, go to her link tree, and you will find it because it's about boundaries. One day is on boundaries, especially for women. Boundaries. And then the next day is CPL or range time, right? So like I'm like, that's great because my goal is actually to have a whole like self-defense, including CPL. So we talking about hand-to-hand combat tactical defense. And then we're talking about CPL certification or just like range time, doing some shooting, defensive shooting, right? And so just being able to kind of have like that 2-day weekend or retreat like event will be great, right? For women, especially. And I would hope it would be like Black women, all Black women, doing that, right? But because I'm a trauma psychologist, I see domestic violence, I see sexual assault, and just that sense of situational awareness, that sense of reading when that learning urgency in a traumatic situation, like not to freeze piece, and either fight or flight is what you want to kick in. And so many of us freeze. So, and I think that's that I want to train people to have that urgency, especially women in like aggressive situations. And then also just being very mindful of self. So I'm hoping to post a lot more psychology and firearm, marrying the two, some integration, doing some more IG posts on that. I have one called emotional situational awareness that I'll be posting very soon. And it's kind of given a psychological spin on situational awareness that, that we teach in firearms in CPL classes. So I'm hoping to integrate much more psychology into the firearm world. So that's what's big for me. And like I said, in my travels, I would love to connect with some firearm instructors, either shadow them or put on some classes together and like do some stuff. So, and even, I don't know how this is going to happen because like I said, I'm new to this, but even doing some stuff internationally would be great.
That's dope. Yeah. So, I love all of that. I'm still, minus the you leaving Michigan part, I'm still a little hurt.
But we're gonna take Smart Shooters on the road. Smart Shooters can integrate, but especially when I'm doing my own thing, definitely a Smart Shooters thing. Because I'm like, it's already established. I love the culture and what's represented, what we represent, right? So why recreate something that's already there and the atmosphere there, right? So it's just recreating that atmosphere where I go. So
I love all of that. So whatever state you do end up landing in, we definitely finna buy some land. We go work that out. Get them your social media handles. Where can they find you? How can they connect with you? Fellas, this is not an invitation to try to reach out to her for nothing other than firearm services. Let them know where they can find you.
So on Instagram at low-key defense, all one word, no special characters, and all spelled correctly. And then my personal page, which I actually just started making it public because I'm starting to do some more posting there and everything, is Casi, CASI _ Max. That's at CASI _ Max. So yeah, I think those are the two. My Facebook is definitely private.
Oh, we know.
Yeah, it's on lock. Yeah.
We know.
So
I'm not even her friend on Facebook.
You told me. So, and I'm gonna make that happen. I keep forgetting. Like even when we just had our meeting, I forgot to still.
We just talked about it in the meeting, and I still didn't get a friend request. That's how low key defense is.
So, and just as a psychologist, I've had, even in my training years, clients try to friend me on Facebook.
Yeah.
You're just like, we're not friends. So,
right.
So that's but low key defense has a purpose. Casi Max will now shifting into a purpose, and so yeah. If you want to get to know me on both, that's cool too. You'll know me a little bit more of like all my activities and the type of food I like to eat on Casi Max. But
yeah, because
low key defense
travels the world at a moment's
notice. I do, right?
I'm like, hey, Cass, do you work this weekend? I'm actually in Mexico, then I'm going to Puerto Rico, then I'm going to do a week in Spain, then I'm going to spend the whole month of January in another country. Like, yeah.
Hey, don't sleep on it. Listen.
I ain't mad. I'm gonna get out here and travel. I'm gonna get there one day.
Look, when I was in Puerto Rico, the beginning of this year, I was like, oh my goodness, I could have bought my firearm. Like, I didn't know I could, and I wasn't really paying attention because I was planning on sitting on the beach the entire time. Let's just be honest. But there was this moment I said, man, I would like to go to a shooting range right now, and didn't have my own firearm, but I realized how many shooting ranges are around. I didn't know that many were there. And there was one literally right down the street from me. But the thing is, you don't know when they're open or closed. Like their timing is so different. They decide to open it when they want to and close when they want to. So the hours that's posted online, they weren't the real hours. So
got you.
But I'm just like, this is amazing. And then like there's land on sale, like all in Puerto Rico and everything. And so like there are things you can establish, or I was looking on some websites, there was all different types of trainings too. And I'm just like, oh man, I could have connected with some people here. So
yeah, well, I'm sure you'll be back because I'm sure 6 months out of the year, at least, you'll be moving around somewhere.
That is the plan. That is the plan, especially to stay in warm climates.
Yeah, that's dope. People still think I'm crazy for shooting in the snow. So, no, I get it.
I thought I was going to experience it before I left.
But you still can. I'm trying to tell you, we could go to the range tomorrow because there's still snow.
That's true. It's snowing tonight.
So we could go tomorrow and it could work. Anyway, we can figure that out. Final thoughts. Give them some final thoughts. Like if somebody was to sit down with you and just be like, just pour into me, like give me some words of wisdom. What's some words of wisdom you got for the people who watch the YouTube channel that you're gonna start putting videos on? Let me just throw that out there. And Nick too, when he watches this.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think he'll even post on Instagram. I don't see it. Anyways, what's your words of wisdom?
I think for the 2A community or those who's interested, like you have to kind of break the myths, like just break like all the taboo things that you have in your mind. One, think about who told you. Was it a drug dealer? Was it somebody who has a record that can't do all these things, right? Like, who are the people that's telling you this? Because growing up, these are things. Like, I grew up in Baltimore City, and my exposure, not with just my brother, but like other people that I was around, these people were dealing drugs, or even when kind of we didn't live in the city anymore, there was still people who were like in gangs or stuff like that, that was freely talking about firearms, right? And like I mentioned, there are more people carrying firearms than you think. So I think it's more so like challenge yourself to break the myths. TV, everything, even just like what we hear currently in the media now, in the news, and about I'm trying not to take this political. Do your research. Just do your research, right? Read the laws. And I'm big on do your research. I think I tell a lot of people that in everything that I do, especially as a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant and all that stuff, do your research, because you want to break those myths. And then ask questions. Ask questions to people that look like you and people that don't look like you. Because even when I talk to people that don't look like me, they know some stuff that I'm like, why are we not having this conversation? Right? Like, and so I'm coming back like, dude, did you know? And so like I'm having these conversations, and I'm calling my dad like, Dad, did you know? And he's like, yeah, that's what they get to do. We don't get to do, it's like having these,
right.
And so but educate yourself, be open to it. Even if you don't believe you should walk around with a firearm on you every day, I still believe, especially every single woman should have a firearm in their home. Like home defense, hands down. Hands down. That was the part where I was just like, I'm not even gonna save more money to get the gun that I desire. I know that I have enough to get a gun that's reliable. And so that's what I did. I got a gun that I knew was going to be reliable. And because I knew that the more I get into this, I can save money later and get the firearm that I want, that I can style on. But my whole thing was like the way things was going down in 2020. And at the time that I got my firearm, I said, no, I at least know how to point and shoot and hit the general area. Cause that was like, I hit the general area. So he gonna get hit in the arm, something like, I don't know. Cause if somebody breaking my house, I'm just pulling the trigger, right? But I didn't want that either. But home defense, and know the gun laws. Because I think oftentimes, especially for Black people, we walk around and we go off of what are our legal rights with firearms based off of what media says and what we see on TV. And we truly don't know.
I agree.
So, yeah, women, home defense, stun guns, if you're allowed to have them in your house, if you're allowed to own them in your state, like have something, know how to secure your house, own a shotgun or a pistol in your home. And then not just owning it, practice and have a plan. So I walk through my house sometimes at night with I don't do this with it loaded yet, but I walk through my house at night with the lights off because I know the basic layout of my place. But I walk through holding my firearm just in case, can I walk through my house and, not fall over anything and all that stuff? How do I walk through, and can I hear and pay attention to where my surroundings are? So I do that at least once or twice a month. So it's actually kind of fun because I'll do it on the spur of the moment, like, I'm gonna see if I can do it. But these are things you should do. So women, I encourage you, be mindful of that, especially if your husband works at night and you got you and your kids, come on.
Yeah. I can dig. All right, well, I appreciate your time. I always appreciate kicking it with you. I still don't know how I feel about you leaving Michigan, but It is what it is.
Okay. I might book something where I can get you that they can pay for you to come down where I'm at.
Well, you know, that is the thing, right? Like, so I'm gonna go where the money flows. So yeah, and that is we global. I will go to Japan with you and we'll be over there. Like these are the universal safety rules. Nah, so I appreciate your time, Cass, and make sure that you keep pushing because like people are watching. So make sure that you keep pushing. And for those of y'all watching, if you stuck it out all the way to the end of this video, shout out to you. If you listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, shout out to you.
Yes.
And I will see y'all next video. Peace.
Peace.